She said it was community maintenance, Karen shouted from across the fence, her voice sharp like the gravel she had just dumped on our side. Grandpa just stood there, hands on his belt, watching his tomato plants buried under piles of gray rocks. The old man didn't move much, but his eyes, they burned like he was 20 again. I tried to calm him. Grandpa, maybe it's a mistake. He didn't answer. He just walked up to the edge of the property, picked up a handful of the gravel and let it fall slowly from his fingers. A mistake, he muttered. She's been planning this. Karen stood tall in her sun hat, HOA badge shining like it meant something. This area is part of the common space now. You can't just plant vegetables wherever you want. Rules are rules. Grandpa's jaw tightened. These rules don't apply on my deeded land, he said quietly. She smirked. That's not what the HOA map says. Then she waved to a truck behind her. Go ahead, boys, finish it. Two men in orange vests tilted another load of gravel over the fence. Grandpa's old red wheelbarrow was crushed beneath it. I could see his hands trembling, not from fear, but from the kind of anger that comes when someone spits on your pride. Karen turned to leave, still smiling. You can file a complaint if you want, but good luck, we own this neighborhood. Grandpa didn't shout, he didn't move. He just whispered almost to himself, we'll see who owns what by sunset. That was the first time I saw that look in his eyes, the same one Mom said he had during his Navy days. The quiet kind of anger that doesn't shout, it plans. And by the time the sun touched the trees, Karen would regret ever stepping on his land. Grandpa disappeared into the shed right after lunch. I thought he was just trying to cool off, but when I peeked through the dusty window, I saw him pulling out old metal chains, his shovel and the big rusty wheelbarrow that had survived more storms than the HOA itself. He moved slow but steady, like every motion had purpose. Grandpa, what are you doing? I asked softly. He didn't look up. Cleaning up her mess, he said. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that made me nervous. By evening, the air smelled of wet soil and diesel. Karen's backyard, sitting just behind her white vinyl fence, shimmered under the setting sun, her pride and joy, a fancy new pool with clear blue water perfect for her HOA socials. She came out in her robe, phone in hand. Oh, it's you again, she said when she saw Grandpa pushing his wheelbarrow toward the fence. I hope you're not planning something stupid. Grandpa didn't stop. He just rolled the wheelbarrow right to the fence line, lifted a shovel full of gravel and said calmly, just returning what's yours. Her smile cracked, excuse me. And before she could react, splash, the first load of gravel landed straight in her pool. The sound was almost satisfying. Water splashed over the deck and onto her designer slippers. She screamed, are you insane? That's vandalism. Grandpa dumped another, then another. You dumped on my land, I'm just helping you keep it neat, he said, his voice steady, almost amused. Karen pulled out her phone, shaking. I'm calling the cops, you'll be arrested. Grandpa looked up with that same calm stare. Good, make sure you tell them where you got the gravel from. The last shovel hit the water and the pool looked more like a swamp now. Karen's face turned red, her voice breaking between screams and threats. But Grandpa didn't care. He turned the wheelbarrow around, dusted off his hands and walked back to the porch. I followed him, still in shock. Grandpa, she's really calling the police. He sat down, poured himself some iced tea and said, good, maybe they'll finally check who really owns this land. And for the first time that day I realized he wasn't angry anymore, he was ready. Karen wasn't bluffing. Within 15 minutes 2 police cruisers rolled up, lights flashing blue across the gravel-covered lawn. Neighbors peeked through blinds, filming from porches like it was the best show of the summer. Karen ran up to the officers, waving her hands. Arrest him, he destroyed my property, he dumped rocks into my pool, she screamed, her voice breaking with fake tears. The taller officer held up his hand. Ma'am, calm down, who's the suspect? She pointed straight at Grandpa, sitting peacefully on the porch, sipping his tea like he was watching the sunset. That man, she spat, he's a danger to the community. Grandpa stood up slowly, nodded to the officers. Evening, gentlemen. Sir, the officer said, we received a complaint about property damage. Did you dump gravel into this woman's pool? Grandpa smiled slightly. I did, but that gravel was dumped on my land first. Karen laughed harshly. Your land, oh please, that lot belongs to the HOA, I have documents. She shoved a folder into the officer's hands, the pages marked with the HOA logo. Grandpa took a slow step forward. You might want to read the bottom of page 2, officer, it mentions lot 49A. The officer scanned the paper, frowned. Ma'am, this says the HOA boundary ends before the fence line. Karen froze, that's a typo, the maps were updated last year. Grandpa cut her off, no updates filed, no approvals logged. County records haven't changed since 1974. The shorter cop's radio crackled and he turned to his partner. Dispatch confirms, lot 49A belongs to a Thomas Grayson, that's you, sir? Grandpa nodded once, that's me. Karen's mouth fell open. That's not possible, the HOA president told me. Grandpa leaned in just enough to make her step back. The HOA president doesn't outrank the county clerk, ma'am. The taller officer looked at her sternly. Ma'am, you might want to be careful, dumping material on someone else's property is considered trespassing and property damage. Her voice cracked, you're arresting me. Grandpa didn't say a word, he just went back to his porch, sat down and took another sip. The sound of her arguing with the officers faded behind him. I looked at him stunned. Grandpa, how did you know all that? He looked at me, eyes glinting beneath the porch light. Because, kid, I drew those maps myself back when I worked for the county. I didn't even breathe. Grandpa wasn't just an old farmer, he was the man who designed the landlines. And Karen had just picked a fight with the wrong neighbor. Karen's face went pale, she looked at Grandpa like she'd just seen a ghost. You worked for the county, she stammered. Grandpa nodded, still calm. For 37 years, I surveyed every inch of this land before you ever parked your car here. The officers exchanged a glance. One of them quietly closed his notebook. Ma'am, he said to Karen, looks like you're the one who needs to explain a few things down at the station. But Karen wasn't giving up. You don't understand, he's twisting the law. He's dangerous, he's making a fool out of the HOA. Grandpa chuckled, the kind that said he'd already won. The HOA made a fool of itself when it forgot to read the deed. Karen's hands shook as she pointed at the cops. If you won't arrest him, I'll call the HOA security, they'll handle it. The taller officer sighed. Ma'am, HOA security isn't law enforcement. Then I'll call Mr. Barnes, he's the president, he'll set this straight, she yelled, fumbling with her phone. A minute later, a black SUV pulled up, headlights slicing through the dusk. Out stepped Mr. Barnes, sharp suit, fake smile, HOA clipboard in hand. Tom, he said in a too friendly tone, we don't want trouble, maybe we can reach an understanding. Grandpa didn't even get up. I already understand, Barnes, you and your Karen here tried to steal my land. Barnes' smile tightened. That's a serious accusation. Grandpa leaned back, so is trespassing, so is fraud. The cops turned toward Barnes. Sir, do you have proof that this property is HOA controlled? Barnes hesitated, flipping through his papers, maps, letters, permits, all printed, none signed by the county. His hand trembled slightly. The shorter officer shook his head. These are copies, no legal seals, that's not valid documentation. Karen snapped, he's lying, he forged something, you have to. Grandpa reached into his pocket and unfolded a faded, yellowed paper. This is the original plat map from '74, he said quietly. My signature's on it, county seal at the bottom, want to see who really owns what? The officer took it, studied it under his flashlight. It checks out, official county document. Karen gasped, stepping back. That can't be right. Grandpa finally stood up, slow but steady. Ma'am, I fought floods, droughts, and bad government in this land for decades, but I never thought I'd have to fight you just to keep it. The silence that followed hit harder than any shout could. Karen's perfect HOA world was cracking right there on the driveway, and she knew it. Grandpa looked her in the eyes one last time and said, You buried my garden, I just buried your lies. Karen stood frozen, her eyes darting between the officers and Grandpa. The quiet hum of the cruiser lights painted her face red and blue like guilt flashing in rhythm. Mr. Barnes tried to recover first, stepping closer to Grandpa with his palms up. Tom, listen, he said carefully, maybe this got out of hand, we can fix it. The HOA will compensate you for the gravel, all right. Grandpa didn't blink. You're not getting it, Barnes. This isn't about gravel, it's about what you tried to take. Karen's voice cracked. We didn't take anything, we were just enforcing the rules. Grandpa turned slowly toward her. Rules don't outrank ownership, you built your little kingdom on assumptions. One of the officers cleared his throat. Mr. Grayson, we'll need both of you to file statements, but from what I see, this man's within his rights. Karen's jaw dropped, so he destroys my pool and just walks free. The officer gave a small shrug. Technically, he returned your property, you dumped on his land first. Barnes ran a hand over his face. Karen, please stop talking. But she couldn't. No, this old man thinks he can embarrass me in front of everyone. I'm calling my lawyer. She spun around, nearly tripping over her slippers, and stormed off toward her house. Grandpa watched her go. You think she'll calm down? I asked quietly. He sighed. No, but she'll make a mistake soon. People like her always do. And he was right. Because the very next morning when the sun came up, Karen was already at it again, posting signs all along the fence. Community violation pending legal action. Grandpa stood on the porch reading them in silence. Then he walked back inside, pulled open the old drawer by the phone and took out a flash drive labeled County Footage 2009. I frowned. What's that? He gave a small grin, proof she should have minded her own pool. Later that day we drove to town. Grandpa walked straight into the county office past the clerk who instantly recognized him. Morning, Mr. Grayson, she said with a smile. Haven't seen you in years. He placed the flash drive on her counter. Thought you might want to see what the HOA's been up to on private property. Within an hour, every violation Karen and Barnes had covered up: illegal drainage work, unapproved fence expansions, and yes, fake permits was pulled up on record. And when the news hit the HOA meeting that evening, even the board started turning on Karen. Grandpa didn't gloat. He just sat in the back row, sipping coffee from a paper cup while the same people who'd cheered Karen last week now whispered her name like a curse. When she finally looked at him, her face pale under the fluorescent lights, he just nodded and said, You wanted a rule book, Karen. Hope you can read fine print. The HOA meeting turned into chaos. Papers flew, voices cracked, and Karen's fake calm shattered completely. This is a setup, she screamed. He's twisting everything. You all saw what he did to my pool. But no one was listening to her anymore. The treasurer slammed his folder shut. You forged signatures, Karen. You told us the land was under HOA control. I was told that by Barnes, she shouted, turning on him like a cornered animal. Barnes held up his hands. Don't drag me down with you. You were the one pushing this land deal. The county official, sitting at the front with Grandpa's evidence, cleared her throat. According to these records, both of you knowingly extended HOA construction onto private property without approval. That's not just unethical, it's criminal. The room went silent. The only sound was the faint buzz of the ceiling fan. Karen's lipstick trembled as she tried to speak. Criminal, she whispered. Grandpa stood slow but firm. You dumped rocks on my land, you broke the law, and you lied to everyone here. Now you'll face it. Karen lunged forward, pointing at him. You think you can just ruin me because you're some old map guy? You don't understand what power looks like. Grandpa looked her dead in the eye. Power isn't what you steal, ma'am, it's what you earn by telling the truth. That line cut through the room like a knife. Even the officers at the door stopped whispering. The county official nodded to them. I think we've seen enough. Ms. Karen Smith, Mr. Harold Barnes, you're both being charged with trespassing, falsifying property records, and unauthorized construction. Karen's knees gave out. This isn't happening, she muttered as the officers gently guided her up. Her phone slipped from her hand, screen cracked like her pride. Barnes didn't even resist, he just stared at the floor, defeated. As they were escorted out, Karen turned back toward Grandpa. You'll regret this, she spat. He tilted his head slightly. Already did. The day you buried my garden. The room stayed silent as the doors shut behind her. Later that night we drove home under a calm sky. The stars reflected off the gravel like they were watching. Grandpa parked the truck and looked at me. You proud of yourself? I asked softly. He chuckled, "I'm proud of the land, son, it fought back today." And when we got out, the air smelled cleaner, the kind of clean that comes after a storm finally ends. The gravel still sat there in piles, dull under the moonlight, but somehow it didn't look like a mess anymore. It looked like proof that even the smallest piece of ground can stand its ground. The next morning, the sun rose over the quiet neighborhood, painting everything gold: the fence, the gravel, even the corner of Karen's ruined pool that peeked through the trees. Grandpa was already outside, shovel in hand, humming an old tune as he cleared the last bit of debris from his garden. The same garden she tried to bury. I walked over, coffee in hand. "So, what happens now?" He smiled, eyes crinkling under his cap. "Now, life happens, tomatoes still need planting." The simplicity of it hit me harder than all the chaos from the day before. He didn't want revenge, fame, or payback. He just wanted peace, the kind that comes from knowing you stood your ground and never bowed to bullies hiding behind fake authority. Down the road, the HOA signs were already coming down. The board voted to suspend operations pending investigation. People waved at Grandpa again, calling him sir, like they finally remembered who really built this community. Karen's house was quiet, blinds drawn, her pool drained. The same neighbors who once admired her now crossed the street to avoid her. As Grandpa leaned on his shovel, he looked across the property one last time and said softly, almost to himself, "She thought she could cover truth with gravel, but truth always finds its way back to the surface." I smiled, watching him return to his plants. The wind rustled the fence, carrying the faint sound of water trickling from the hose, life moving on, steady and sure. And for the first time in weeks, the land felt calm again, not because the fight was over, but because justice, real justice, had finally taken root. Sheaf of rice.